What's up guys, Ace here, bringing guys a MTG video which I haven't done in a long time. Today I'm playing my Boros Aggro deck in light of all the Sultai or whatever variation of Bureau X Lotus Cobra piles. I wanted to play a little aggressive deck, and this deck is essentially just Boros value aggression or incremental value aggression with cards like Luminarch, Aspirant, and Robber the Rich to gain incremental values to like hopefully pull against a lot of the shenanigans going on. And as you can see here, it's so important that you do everything so to the T when you're playing against these decks, because you really need every inch to pull against these decks. And if you guys check the first opening mulligan and my first play, you'll see why everything matters in this game. So without further ado, here's the game. So looking at our opening hand, it's not too bad. Now if you have a 1-drop, it's just icing on the top. However, what we really want is to get a Luminarch, Aspirant, or Robber the Rich. That's because we want to swing in for that aggro along with getting that value, and so that's why those cards are just key to the deck in general. I find that most of the time if I don't have like a key 2-drop in my hand, the deck really doesn't work. Now that's probably why I'm plat only, so you guys can understand. But essentially my first mistake was not playing the Fireblade Charger. Now if you guys don't know what the Fireblade Charger does, is when it dies, it deals damage based on its power. And of course that coupled with the Luminarch Aspirant on turn 1 and turn 2, that means you're swinging for 2 power on turn 2. And I think that'll come up later in the game. However, I sort of remedied this back with getting a counter on my Luminarch Aspirant and then getting Rob the Rich off the top, which means I can swing in for 5 on turn 2, which is decent. Like that's decent. I don't think that was actually possible last. Maybe it was possible last rotation with Boros. I don't know. Anyways, this dude, of course, as WotC likes to do, print a bunch of card draw on life gain to sort of negate the whole aggro strategy. Which can we stop doing that, by the way? Like, please, please stop doing that. That's Omnath, freaking Yoro, everything else under the sun, Gilded Goose. It generates like virtual card advantage with the tokens it generates. Anyways. We got another Luminarch Aspirant. I think the strategy with Luminarch Aspirant is to generally not put too much power on itself, but something else that can be easily destroyed and you won't care about too much. Because generally I find that if they kill the value engine doesn't do too much damage. And it's already doing enough being a value engine. And so you want to put it on stuff like the 1-mana 1/1s or the stuff like the Seasoned Hollow Blade, where like you can generally they'll actually be a little greedy, and that they'll hit the, maybe it's not greedy all the time, but they'll hit the Luminarch Aspirant despite it being a 2-mana 1/1, and they won't hit, so they'll keep taking damage from the Seasoned Hollow Blade that has like 5 counters on it, and so they keep taking damage. In this game, I'm actually not quite sure what happens here. I believe I was like super hoping for, because obviously there's an Omnath, that I was super hoping for a land off the top so I can hit those freaking Omnaths, because geez, have you ever played against that and the Lotus Cobra? It's disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting with the Yoro piles. I feel really good when I'm beating this deck, which is why one of the reasons why I'm uploading this. Anyways, I swing in. I'm hoping for the trade. They don't trade. I'm like, okay, that might be a little greedy for them, but maybe they're playing blue-green, and so it's fine, right? And, you know, of course, I stole one of their Omnaths, so I'm guessing they're running like three or four Omnaths with all the lands they're running, so I guess that's probably understandable. And I'm guessing, of course, they did a little greedy keeper here, I guess, because they didn't have any lands, it seemed like. But, yeah, they did a greedy keep. Actually, I'm actually curious why they did that. They didn't. So I'm assuming they would just draw another Omnath or let that Omnath go to the bin, so that way they can pull out their Euro again. But maybe they're trying to get super greedy with the Lotus Cobras and the lands that are coming in next turn and just completely cycle through their deck. Anyways, I hit the freaking Omnath off the top, and I was like, yes. And it's like, there's no way they'll chump. Now I'm thinking right here, because if they chump in a particular way, I think they would be able to live, and I think they do live regardlessly. But the thing is, you want to make sure you get the most damage in as possible. So I try to spread out the counters from the Luminarch Aspirant as much as possible and not put too many counters on one thing. I guess you could say not put too many too many eggs in a basket in regards to these creatures with so many counters on them. And you can see like it holds up fine here. And right here you can see I'm down 2 damage, which is so crazy because I missed the 2 damage out in the first opening play from the Fireblade Charger, which is still in my hand. It's just sitting in my hand, not doing that 2 damage that it could have done. Like, it could have died too. Like, people generally don't want the Fireblade Charger to die because it'll ping something, maybe a Lotus Cobra, and so it'll usually get in for 2 damage. But if I'd played that into the Luminarch Aspirant, we would have had the win here. And then they play their Euro. I'm like, uh-oh. The tides are turning. It's happening. They play the Euro, and you can never get back. But of course, there we go. The Giant Killer, and also this Giant Killer is also coming in clutch most of the time. Giant Killer comes in clutch and lets me tap down the Euro, and we win. And that was a particular game that I do not like playing. So here's my deck list currently. Now it's going through a few iterations, but generally this is how you want to do it. I thought I had put in 2 of those modal lands, but I think I didn't. So I guess you could change these planes into maybe 2 Shijiri Shelter and Shijiri Glacier, and I think it'll be fine. Giant Killers have come in clutch, especially when you're running against green decks where they have stuff like Omnath. Of course, you can use the chop down and completely just decimate their board. And of course, as per usual, this will get things such as the new Vampire Nighthawk. You can tap it so they don't get life. This is a great card. I think I find it hard to cut this card, and generally it's always made it so that it wouldn't get cut. This is a good card. Selfless Savior, of course, this is good. It protects your value engines like the Luminarch Aspirant and the Robber the Rich. So this is generally a decent card. Also swings for 2 if you get a chance. Also have the Fireblade Charger. If you can pump this up, it's great. Also, it's just a 1/1 for 1 that deals an extra damage. If they do lock with their Lotus Cobra, which usually they don't. I've had it happen like twice, but that's about it. You can sometimes get a 1 for 2, but that's very rare. And of course, they have a crappy hand. And in that case, it's like they're going to concede anyways, so it's like whatever. And of course, the same deal with this. I'm not sure if I should change this in for another red drop, or other red drop would suffice for this. I'm guessing you could do maybe become a little lighter on the red drops on 1, and you can run the Human Knight. That's a 1-mana 2/1, and it essentially functions at this, and it does a little more hard. It does swing a little harder, but this protects against board wipes, I guess, because you can always ping the face with it. So I'm not quite sure how I'm feeling about these 1 drops. Although I think I do like Fireblade Charger for the exact reason why I would have won last game. But of course, we have the Luminarch Aspirant. This has been pretty good. They have to handle it, or else it just like literally buffs your creatures over and over. Like after you play a game with this and it sticks, like count the amount of power you've gained just by playing this. Like every turn you get 1 more power. It's like playing a 1 drop every turn. It's pretty good, pretty strong. I like this card. Seasoned Hollowblade, of course, if you have Luminarch Aspirant out and Seasoned Hollowblade, you generally just want to protect the Hollowblade because then it swings in for like 4 or 5, and of course they have to chump. Of course, if you're playing against decks that have a bunch of blockers, you don't really want to do that. You want to play with, I guess, something like the Crystalline Giant. Other than that, this is a pretty solid card. Robber the Rich, of course, the Robber the Rich things. Yeah, the Basri Ket. This is pretty helpful against the more control-y decks where you can't really get in with your creatures because they're always being wiped. And so once you get the emblem, usually win. Usually win. Like usually once you get 6 and you start building up the counters on your creatures, it's like they can keep board wiping, but you're gonna keep on getting creatures, and it's like usually you can push that, right? But yeah, there's only 2 of because like it doesn't work all the time, but when it works, it works. Bone Crusher Giant. This is just removal. We don't have too much removal besides the Giant Killer, and these just functions as kind of like card draw in that it's always a 1 for 2. You can kill one of their creatures with this. Also, you can use it as a creature for turn 1. Along with this, you can kill a creature. Also, you can turn it as a creature for turn 3. Pretty decent. Crystalline Giant. This card does wonders. Now, there's some RNG with it, but generally I found that this card is pretty good and that it can win you games by itself. I think it's stronger than Basri Ket in this case, in those cases. But also it protects pretty well. Like once you get the first strike and death touch on it, or if you get lifelink against aggro, it's so good. They have to destroy it. And like aggro is running on like shocks until like, as long as you don't block with this, it'll carry you through the game. It'll drag you kicking and screaming through those games. It's happened many times, and I always try to jam this turn 3 as soon as possible. But yeah, this is the deck. Tell me what you guys think about it. I'll probably change up more in the future, and if I do, maybe I'll play a few games with it. But other than that, peace out guys, and have a nice one.